Hey guys, back again, and this time I'm with another review. This time it's the 2012's NWO The Revolution, which came out in 2012. It's a sports documentary of wrestling, and the problem is with this, before I get started with the review, it's a lot of the footage in this is archive footage from other documentaries, like the NWO Back in Black and probably the WCW ones, and I can't tell you exactly. I think one's from the Monday Night Wars, and it's just like annoying because you get these ones that pop up from like 2002, 2005, 2003, and it ruins the documentary in my view. I mean, the documentary's not that great. I'm only reviewing the documentary. I'm not reviewing the matches on it because I'm going to review the matches sometime in the future, probably from the WCW DVDs I've got. But anyway, it's very disappointing from that angle, the fact that you're watching something that has probably about 45% archive footage in it. So basically, it starts off with the whole WCW being, the NWO being bought from Jim Crockett, and it goes to Ted Turner, who started WCW. Hulk Hogan leaves WWE, aka WWF at the time, and joins WCW. Then you get more people jumping ship like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They leave to go over there, but you didn't know this back in the time. Now, I was fortunate enough to be young enough, stupid enough, and a big, massive fan of wrestling to really enjoy this storyline, because when this storyline happened with the NWO, I was actually going around my nan's every weekend, sleeping on her sofa. I think I was, what, 10 at the time? Yeah, I was about 10. And every Friday I'd go over there on TNT, they'd have Monday Night Show. I was going to say Monday Night Raw then. Monday Night Show. And they'd also have Thunder when Thunder was made. So you'd get Monday Night Show and then you'd get Thunder straight after. They were like both 2-hour shows. And it was awesome. I used to sit there my nan, come on Kevin Nash. Come on, Hulk Hogan. Come on, Sting. Sting. You know, because Sting was so big back then. And he was the icon. Literally. He was the icon. Sting was his biggest, I would say, in the 90s. It's easy to say he was almost as big in the 80s. Especially his match against Flair at Clash of the Champions. But anyway. So it goes on about how Scott Hall turns up and people think he's jumped ship because that's what Eric Bischoff wanted. Because Eric Bischoff was basically hired to make WCW work. And see, this is the problem I think with Eric Bischoff. Because when Eric Bischoff got big due to WCW, when he got bigger and bigger and bigger on the stage, he kind of became more of a jerk. But we'll get into that later. So you get Scott Hall when he goes, I got a big surprise for you, Bischoff. And then you got Kevin Nash tonight, and they were known as the Outsiders. Formerly known as Diesel and Razor Ramon in WWE. If you want to go further back, you could also call them the names they had in the NWA and so forth. So anyway, they're basically starting this thing, and then there's this match at Bash of the Beach. And is it Bash of the Beach? Yeah. And basically, they're fighting Sting, Lex Luger, and Macho Man Randy Savage. And it's just them. Well, things change during the match, and right by the end, you get Hulk Hogan turn up. And everybody's like, yay! Hulk Hogan's here! Hulk Hogan's here! Hulk Hogan's going to save the day because he's the good guy. He gets in that corner, he looks at everybody, and then he does a leg drop right on Savage. And everyone's like, oh. Yeah, I remember seeing it live on pay-per-view at the time, and I was just like this as a kid. I was like, and it was gobsmacking because nobody expected it. You know, unlike if you had John Cena turn heel now, everybody would be like, well, we expected it, we wanted him to do it, so, yeah. But Hulk Hogan, nobody, and literally nobody ever thought of him becoming a heel or becoming a bad guy, because he was Hulk Hogan. Say your prayers and take your vitamins, and he was like the ultimate American good guy, and he had the flag, and if you knew Hulk Hogan had it, you knew you were a man, and you knew you had to do your vitamins, say your prayers, and work hard to be a good person in your life, just like Hulk Hogan. Now, that was when you were a kid. Now, you make a sex tape, and you have a saggy ass, basically, and that's how you become Hulk Hogan. But anyway, going back to the review. So basically he does that, and then you get this whole thing about how nobody expected him to be a bad guy, you know, in the documentary. And about how big it was getting, and how Hulk Hogan and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were awesome in the role, and they were getting people to come in it to make it slightly bigger. Like one being Paul Wright, aka The Big Show. He became a part of it. The million dollar man, Ted DiBiase, they hired him to be the mouthpiece. Because, let's face it, the $1 Million Man could talk. And then you had Vincent, a.k.a. Virgil. The toes, Virgil. The toes. So anyway, where you're watching it and you're like, okay, this ain't so bad. You know, it's a documentary. Because, like I said, I grew up on this. And I saw it. So it was good at that point. But then you see, Teddy DiBiase didn't become the mouthpiece as much as they wanted to, because Eric Bischoff felt he could do better. And to be fair, Eric Bischoff was great as the mouthpiece back at the time. He was awesome. He was a skinny little runt, and you wanted to see him get his. You know what I'm saying? You wanted to see him get it. A lot like how, if you think about Bobby the Brain Heenan or Jimmy the Mouth Hart. You know, Jimmy Hart. I hope I got his nickname right there. Anyway, like him. So you're sitting there and you're watching the documentary, and then it shows about how they're getting popular, and they've got these soundbite commercials which are really cool, you know, like we're the new world order and all this. And then it basically shows them getting more and more people. And see, the problem when this actually happens was they ended up having way too many people in the group. Like, you look at any group over the time, Generation X, 5, 6 members. Evolution, 4. The 4 Horsemen, they had multiple different versions, but there was never like 50 people in the group. The NWO suffered because, like in the documentary it says, everybody wanted to be in the NWO because it was the big thing, and they all thought it'd give them a push. So they all kind of wanted to get a part of the action. Thus, you ended up with only a few WCW guys to go against the NWO guys. So then you had to have these fights between NWO people. Another problem, which it shows in the documentary, is when they had their own, I think it was Sold Out pay-per-view. And the NWO were going against WCW people, but they had NWO referees, which was a really, really stupid idea. Because by having an NWO referee, you wouldn't lose, would you? So it's a bit stupid. So then they show Malone and Rodman teaming up with, well, Malone was teaming up with Dominic Page and Rodman with Hulk Hogan. Because let's face it, Rodman was like out there and he was like living the lifestyle of crazy. And Malone was like a really, really good bloke. Carl Malone, I think his name was. And they had this fight at, I think it was Road Wild or something like that. And it was really, really big. But the problem was, Eric Bischoff and that ended up focusing more on the star power they could get in than the actual wrestling. And I think, to a degree, that's what happened with WWE a couple of years ago, with this whole guest host rubbish. You were getting all this, like, oh, let's get the Muppets in, let's get Hugh Jackman in. I don't give a crap about that. I care more about the wrestling. I care more about the storylines. So it goes on about how they slowly fell to the floor, basically, and the whole idea became a big, massive mistake because you ended up with the NWO, then NWO Wolfpack, which was my favourite group back in the day. I loved the Wolfpack. But thinking about it now, Sting would never have joined the NWO, let alone the NWO Wolfpack, because he was a WCW guy. And that's another point about this documentary. It shows Sting going against the NWO, and that was a great storyline. That was awesome. One man against the whole NWO, and he was taking them out one by one. You'd see the lights go out. You'd see them on the floor. You'd see him standing over them. It was awesome. There was even a great part, like promo segment, where he had the NWO shirt on and he pulled it off and turned on Hulk Hogan and the Big Show. Even lifted the Big Show up, I think, if I remember correctly. It was awesome. Amazing time. But then Sting joins the Wolfpack and you're like, really? So in Wolfpack you had Disco Inferno, you had Lex Luger, you had Conan, you had Kevin Nash. I think you had Scott Hall as well. Who else did you have? But yeah, they're the ones I remember. And they'd go against the NWO. And it was really pointless. Because since Kevin Nash was one of those people that basically invented the NWO and was a big part of it, it seemed just a bit stupid. Then you had the Latino World Order, which was basically Eddie Guerrero, La Parka, Jovito Guerrero, Psychosis. And they didn't last long. But I actually liked them because it was just kind of like, you know, like Lucha Libre. And I like that. Because the best part about WCW, other than the NWO at the time, was the whole Lucha Libre Cruiserweight division. And Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman. It was an awesome time. And the problem with WWE is they never, ever, ever, ever really got the potential of their Lucha Libre Cruiserweights like they did in WCW. It was so much better back then. Anyway. So the documentary basically ends with them saying about how technically they believe the NWO kind of ruined WCW in the long run because it became a bigger obsession and it faded out and WCW kept trying to bring it back, like with Bret Hart and Jeff Jarrett back in 2000. And it sucked. It literally did. It sucked monkey balls. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know, this documentary, it's terrible because it's only an hour long. A documentary on the NWO really should have been about 2.5 hours. And another problem with it is it didn't have key players in it. Like you had Kevin Nash and Scott Hall talking, but I'm sure the Scott Hall one was archive footage from Back in Black. I'm sure it was. Kevin Nash I'm not so sure of. But you didn't have Hulk Hogan. You didn't have Eric Bischoff. You had him from Monday Night Wars DVD and probably Back in Black. But you didn't have him, you didn't have like up to date with him. Because he was working at TNA at the time and so was Hulk Hogan. So it was a bit pointless bringing out this set until they were able to be in the documentary. Because it would have been so much better to have the actual main players talking about it. Instead of people like Teddy DiBiase, Booker T, Matt Striker, you know, who else? Cody Rhodes was great talking about it because, like me, watched it as a kid. So it's a big, massive memory for him, you know. Who else was it? Oh, Dusty Rhodes. It looks really, really haggard now. I mean, it looks really bad. But, yeah, they had some good people talking about it, but it just felt like if it had had them in it, it would have been a lot better. And if it had been an hour and a half more, it would have been a lot better. Because they really, really skimmed through some of the subjects. And it really, really kind of hurts the documentary. On the matches side, the matches on the Blu-ray, they're not so bad. They're okay. And there's some good segments there. But overall, the documentary is a real letdown. So yeah, basically, that's it. You know, there's not really much to the documentary. There's a whole load of stuff, but really, if you're a fan of the NWO faction back in the WCW days of the 90s, it's everything you already know, basically, told to you again. You don't really need to watch this documentary. You don't really need to own the documentary. But if you're a real big wrestling fan, I recommend giving it a watch. I recommend picking up, putting in your collection, because that's what I did. Make sure you get the slipcover as well, because it's got a nice kind of embossing kind of feel to it. So, yeah, guys, that's basically my review of NWO The Revolution. Thanks for watching. If you like this review, please like the video and please subscribe. See you later, guys.